This Dvar Torah comes to you from Tokyo in Japan, where we are in transit from Israel to Melbourne and have a few hours here. So I thought it's an opportune moment, I've never been here before, to bring some Kedusha to Tokyo by sharing some Divrei Torah with you all. Moshe Rabbeinu says in Parshas Devarim, Eicha esa levadi, torchachem mas'achem v'rivchem. Moshe Rabbeinu, on the face of it, seems to be saying that Klal Yisrael is too much for me to carry, too much for me to bear, and as a result of which he has to appoint a whole group of thousands of teachers and judges and leaders who will look after all the different families and tribes of Klal Yisrael. But this pasuk has got some very, very interesting depth to it. First of all, what does it mean, torchachem mas'achem v'rivchem? What's he saying? That I can't carry you alone because of the tircha. The tircha means the difficulty, the hard work. And mas'achem means the heavy burden. V'rivchem and your disputes. So here's an interesting thing. So Moshe Rabbeinu is giving us, in these three words, a very interesting insight into rabbinic life. And this is the Ramban. In fact, I heard this in a drosha from Shlomo Wolbe about 40, 50 years ago. He spoke about this Ramban, and he said this Ramban contains within it the essence of the job description of rabbinic life. Because the Ramban says, what is torchachem? What is the tircha? The tircha is to teach Torah to every person on his level, to be able to convey the meaning and the beauty and the depth and the importance of every detail of Torah to everybody at a level that they can understand. That is a great tircha. That is a great challenge in many ways. And Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, you've grown to such a massive nation that to be able to achieve this is beyond the abilities of any single person. And hence he had to appoint all these other teachers. What is mas'achem? What is the heavy load? Says the Ramban, it means davening for you. He says, I'm constantly davening for your well-being, for your inspiration, for your not losing your sense of direction. I, Moshe Rabbeinu, davening for Klal Yisrael. Says Rav, but that's part of the job of a Rav, to daven for his kehillah, both for their physical well-being and their spiritual well-being, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should hear their tefillas. This is the second job. And rivchem means to resolve disputes in some way, wherever possible, to bring disputing sides together and to find a way forward without hostilities. So this is in itself an interesting Ramban and an interesting insight into Rabbanos in general. But what's really critical about this pasuk is the use of the word Eicha. And Chazal, in the very, very first paragraph of the Medrash of Eicha, as we all know, that Eicha is the Megillah which we read on Tisha B'Av night, sitting on the floor. We read Eicha, the Lamentations, written by Yirmiyahu Hanavi, about the destruction of the first temple. But what's interesting is the Medrash says, Shloshan nisnabu b'loshan Eicha. There were three Nevi'im who all used the same word Eicha. Says the Medrash, Moshe Rabbeinu used the word Eicha when he was speaking about the enormity of Klal Yisrael, how massive they were at so many different levels, so many different views and different opinions and different groups. And Kekochvei Hashamayim Lo Roiv, they were so powerful and so inspired that to lead them was a really impossible job for a single person. So Medrash says Moshe Rabbeinu saw them in their greatness. Yeshaya, in this week's Haftarah Shabbos Chazon, Yeshaya also uses the word Eicha. Eicha Hoisa Lezoina, Kiryo Ne'emana. How could the city that was the epitome of truth and integrity and spirituality, how could it become so corrupt? So this is the emotion. So Yeshaya Novi sees the Jewish people in their deterioration. And then Yirma uses the word Eicha, and he sees them in their destruction. After the terrible destruction, he sees them in their avelus, in their mourning for the loss of Yerushalayim. And they all use the same word. So what is it about this word that makes it meaningful in all these three different Nevi'im, teaching all these three different messages? So here comes an interesting thing. If you look in the Mefarshim, Eicha comes from the word Eich. Eich simply means, how does it work? How much does it cost? How do I get there? How do I get from A to B? Eich ani olech. How do I manage to solve this problem? So the word Eich is one of the most common question mark words in the Hebrew language, but Eicha is a word which doesn't just mean how does it work, but it's a rhetorical question. It's not looking for an answer. It means this is inconceivable. What I'm witnessing now is beyond logic, is beyond reason. It's lo niklat. It can't quite grasp what is being said here. It is an expression of incredulity and of amazement and of shock. That's what the word Eicha means. And what's interesting here is that Chazal want to tell us, look at Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshaya, and Yirmiyah. They're all in shock for different reasons, but at the root of it, it's all the same reason. What's the reason? The reason is that the history of the Jewish people and the essence of the Jewish people is not something average and something normal and something predictable. Everything that happens to Klal Yisrael is either incredibly great, something lemala min hateva, something supernaturally great, or it is unbelievably disastrous, unbelievable sufferings, or unbelievable mistakes being made. And this is really something about Klal Yisrael which is remarkable. The Maharal speaks about it in Netzach Yisrael, that the whole of Klal Yisrael is really lemala min hateva, leads a supernatural existence. And this supernatural existence is captured in the word Eicha. And it's true for Moshe Rabbeinu that they're supernaturally massive and demanding and great. And for Yeshaya that it's supernatural how they could make such unbelievable mistakes as were being made to bring about the Churban of the first Beis HaMikdash. And thirdly, by Yirmiyah, how is it possible for a nation to go through such terrible sufferings? Right? Like Yirmiyah is watching a Holocaust taking place. People who saw the Holocaust and survived the Holocaust and witnessed the Holocaust and then saw Klal Yisrael bouncing back to life in a certain sense. After a disaster, that is also Eicha. How is that possible? How is it possible? I attended lectures in Israel recently which were entitled Mimashber L'tzmicha, from a disaster to a growth. That Klal Yisrael finds potential of growth in every disaster. And the truth is, having spent 3 weeks now in Israel, we saw the Eicha at all these different levels. We saw the Eicha of how could they possibly have made such big mistakes to allow the 7th of October to take place. I don't think we'll ever quite adequately get an answer to that question. How is it possible that such incredible mistakes were made, and which led to the loss of life of thousands of people, and a war which we're still not out of, and a hostage crisis that we're still not out of? That in itself is an Eicha. It reverberates in our mind. How is that possible? And then when you go, like we did, to the places of the massacres, we went to Nir Oz and to Nachal Oz and to Nova and to Tekuma, these places where a total massacre took place. You think, Eicha, how does Klal Yisrael survive these terrible sufferings, terrible butchery and terrible disasters? This is also an Eicha, right? And at the same time, there's the Eicha of Moshe Rabbeinu. When you see the gevura of the people who are involved in saving Klal Yisrael and protecting Klal Yisrael, the gevura of the individual soldiers going into the fire, I'm reading a book at the moment in Ivrit called Yom Echad B'October, which is simply a journalist documented 40 different stories of gevura, of tremendous heroism, of individuals who basically took whatever they had and ran towards the danger in order to protect their brothers and sisters in the yishuvim and kibbutzim in Otev Aza, and it's a most extraordinary read. And that's also Eicha. So Eicha is an incredulity positively, an amazement, and it's also the shocking degree of suffering and of the mistakes that were made. And all these three meanings are in the words of Eicha. When we say them this weekend, we're going to be saying on Shabbos morning the Eicha of Moshe Rabbeinu, followed by the Haftarah, the Eicha of Yeshaya, followed by Tisha B'Av, the Eicha of Yirmiyah, and they're all relevant for us today. But I want to add one fourth meaning of the word Eicha, and that is that the word Eicha is spelt Aleph Yud Kaf Hey, exactly like the word that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Adam and Chava after they had eaten the forbidden fruit from the Eitz Hadas, and he says Eicha. So Eicha is not an expression of amazement or shock. Eicha is a question, and the question is, where are you? Now, on the face of it, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to ask that question of Adam and Chava is absurd. What does it mean, where are you? HaKadosh Baruch Hu has lost you on his GPS screen. What does it mean, where are you? Clearly, it doesn't mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't know where you are. What it means is, where do you think you are? Where are you in this whole situation? That Eicha is a very personal, existential call to duty. And it's a call to duty which is heard throughout Am Yisrael today, both those living in Israel and living in Chutz La'aretz. When such terrible tragedies and such events happen in Klal Yisrael, the answer that everybody has to answer is Eicha. Where are you in this event? What part are you playing? How can you contribute, whether it's financially, whether it is in tefillah, whether it is doing special mitzvahs, whether it is in Israel, whether it is going to fight? All this is the final use of this one word, Eicha, a magic word, which captures the supernatural essence of the Jewish people and the challenge that HaKadosh Baruch Hu poses to each and every one of us, and Yehi Rotzen, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should protect our chayalim, ha'omdim al mishmar artzeinu v'orei Eloheinu, should help and protect our ptsuim, the wounded and the hostages, and the Be'ez Hashem, this Tisha B'Av should be the end of all our suffering, suffocates, should bring an end to all our sadnesses of this year, and please God, we should be able to see really the Geula Shalema and the Chomas Tzion B'Yerushalayim. Amen.